Welcome to Learning to Glow, a show about wellness, skin health, and self-development. I'm your host, Jess. I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and skincare expert. I'm so excited to share tips on how to achieve healthy skin and bring amazing guests in the field of health, fitness, aging gracefully, and personal growth. Let's explore all different ways we can take care of ourselves as women, both inside and out, to truly shine. So let's get glowing. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. We have a wonderful episode for you today. Our guest is Diamond Drip, a spiritual growth coach specializing in empowering Gen X and millennial women. Using tools like human design and gene keys, she guides her clients to trust their intuition, embrace authenticity, and unlock their full potential. I loved how she shares and what she shares as far as why we should look into human design, why we should look into our type, and how it can help with our personal lives, our work, our relationships. And you can learn more about your human design or get your chart. If you've never heard of what I'm talking about, you'll definitely know more by the end of this episode. And on her website, you can get a free chart download. So you can go to my show notes and you can find that link to get your human design. I share a lot of personal stories in this episode about mine and why it's been so beneficial and so accurate. So it's a very, very fun episode, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you guys for listening. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. If you haven't left a review for us, you can do so by going to Apple Podcasts and leaving a review, as well as Spotify. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show today. We have Diamond Drip with us. Welcome to Learning to Glow.
I am so excited to be here with you today, Jess.
I'm so happy that you're here. I'm very excited about the topics that we're going to talk about. But before we get into all that, if you could just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do, that would be great.
Absolutely. So I work with women who are millennial aged and Gen Xers, because those are the right. They have these time brackets for our decades. I used to have the language of like 29 to 40-year-old women, and I was like, that just feels awkward every time I say it. So thank goodness for decades. But I help those women to understand who they are and what they came into this lifetime to do, what they came here to learn, and what their purpose is. I help them understand how to listen to the voice that's inside of them and less of the voices that are outside of them. So their friends, family, society, the ones that cause us to lean into fear and self-doubt and doubt ourselves. So I help them shed that.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. That's what we need. I'm Gen X, so... And I think a lot of my listeners are also Gen X too, and millennials, of course. So that's so great. With that being said, you do use different ways to help your clients get to their purpose. And I love that you said, really listening to our voice and not what we hear or what we think we're supposed to do. We've been talking about that on my podcast. It's so important to not make decisions out of what should I do? What does everybody expect me to do? And really listen to what you want and what your needs are. So I love that, first of all. You and I had talked about some of the ways that you work with your clients. And one of the ways was using the gene keys. And I was very excited about this because I've never heard about it. And most of the time I've heard about a lot of these things, and so I'm very intrigued. Please share with us what that is, and then we can talk a little bit about it more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that I have these tools now, because without them I was kind of just floundering myself. So I love that I found them for myself, and that I also found them and have been working with them with different clients, and now I can introduce them to clients. So gene keys. I'll talk a little bit about human design first, just because that one came first, if that's okay.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and that one I know about. I love human design. So yeah, tell our listeners if they haven't heard of it.
Yes. So human design is a synthesis of a bunch of different sciences that form this body graph chart. So you're able to see your energy in tangible form, the areas where you're defined, where you have your strengths, where you have your gifts, and the areas where you're not so defined. So you do take in messages from your outside environment. You do take in energy from your environment, and it becomes amplified in you. And so, two of the sciences that are a part of human design, so the Chinese I Ching and quantum physics, are actually what go into gene keys. So that's why I was like, I'd be doing myself a disservice if I
Oh,
didn't talk a little bit about human design before I dove into gene
yeah.
keys. So Gene Keys takes a closer look at the 64 gates that are in human design. And so in Gene Keys, every single gate, every single gift that we have, it has different frequencies. So we have the shadow frequency, which is unfortunately where we've lived most of our lives. Then you have the gift, so transforming the shadow. And then when things are really clicking, when you're really moving towards your purpose, what you're here to do in this lifetime, that's when you enter into the highest frequency, which is called the Siddhi, Siddhi, which is a Sanskrit word. And so it's through looking at the areas where you lived in the shadow so that you can gain the wisdom of how you could have transformed those into gifts, but moreover, how you can work towards living more in the gift and living less in the shadow. So that's what the Gene Keys work is all about.
So cool. Okay, so let's go back to human design first. First of all, what are you in human design?
So I'm a 5/1 emotional generator in human design. What are you?
Well, I don't know
The
the
profile.
first part. Ways. Yeah, I'm a generator,
Okay.
and I think most people are generators, right? Like that's the biggest group in our society is a generator.
70% of the population is either a generator or a manifesting generator, which is a hybrid energy.
Okay, yeah. So I'm a generator. I have my chart. I should have looked at that before I did this call. But yeah, okay, so cool. So maybe you could do a little breakdown of that because I feel like this is also anyone can go and find out what their human design is. We should say you can go and on the website of human design, you can get your type. Is that what they? I don't know. Do they call it a type?
So, yes, there are a bunch of different websites out there that do give your free chart, which gives the typical things that it gives are your type, strategy, authority, profile, and some of them give your incarnation cross. But to cut down on the confusion, they can also just use the one that's on my site because
Oh, good. Okay, perfect.
it
I'll
gives
link that.
yeah it gives a blurb for each of those things, which some do and some don't, because a lot of the way the sites are set up is they want you to buy the report so that you can learn what the one word that they gave you meant. I give you what the blurb is because I'm like, if you want to buy the report and learn more, absolutely. But I want you to be empowered with the knowledge of who you are so that you can make that choice if you want to get a report or not.
Oh, good. Okay, that's so great to know. I will link your website for everyone because if you don't know your human design, you should definitely look into it. And well, since we're talking about human design, tell us why we should know about our human design. And I one of the things that really was eye-opening for me once I learned about the human design. And by the way, nothing has ever rang more true than when I was reading what my human I was like, this is so spot on. It just blew my mind. I became like so interested in it. But one of the things that I really resonated with and I learned from the human design chart was that I am like this, it's the sacral. Um, my verbiage is not good with this,
You're
but
doing amazing.
the sacral, like if you're making a decision
Hmm.
and you'll feel it in your gut. And I was like, that is something that I definitely knew that I get gut feelings. I have intuition. But once I learned that, I was like, okay, is this a yes? And I'll know by my gut, like I'll feel it. And if it's not a yes, like for me, it's usually no. I really have to be like really into it to make it be a yes. Like if I'm asking myself a question about, something that is meaningful in my life, I now can just sit and go, okay, like, should I do this? Is this a yes or is this a no? And that is something I've learned through my human design chart. So tell us a little bit more about like how this can be helpful in our lives and it not just our lives, but like in our relationships. Like there's so many benefits of it.
So you just made my heart light up so much as you talked about how it helps your, because you don't even know how many people, like, they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of human design, I think I'm like a generator or something, and like they think nothing else of it. And so to hear that, especially as a business owner, you are using this with your decision making,
Mm.
that's the most important reason why someone should at least know what their strategy and authority is. So many times, and this is a cultural thing, we live in a society that prizes the logical and prizes fact and prizes evidence and all of these different analytical things. And a lot of that is in the mind. There's so much wisdom that's in us. Our bodies know whether or not we have the energy for something or not. So when you're talking about, so thank you, because that explains what you're like, I don't know, I still don't know your profile, but it sounds like you are a pure generator. So sacral is your authority. So where you and I differ, and so this will go to the point of understanding why this is important. So I am a generator, so I have that sacral response. If something is presented to me, especially in the four big areas that we should be using this for, so friends, relationships, if we're about to move, and in our career, if something is presented for me to engage my generator strategy, which is to respond, my sacral is going to be like, like, yes, give me more of that, or no. And if it's a maybe, then it's probably a no. And so I love how you kind of did an excellent job of communicating this and how you make decisions, because one thing that you'll learn over time in experimenting with your strategy and authority is that if it's not a heck yes, then it's probably a heck no. And what happens is our bodies will tell us, like, but then the mind will kick in and it'll be like, but these other things are good, so it should be a yes, even though you feel like it's a no. And it's like, no, no, no is a complete sentence. I don't have the energy for that, brain, actually. Like, absolutely not. And so where you and I differ is that I have emotional authority. And so that just simply means that that little triangle, the solar plexus, you're most likely very empathetic. So you take in the energy of those around you. And maybe as a child, it was difficult for you to separate whose emotions you were feeling. It was difficult to
Yes.
separate those two things. And so I have emotional authority. So I do have definition in that area. So I am actually, most likely, if we were growing up together, one of those people whose energy you would feel and you'd be like, why do I feel this way right now? Like, I don't think I'm feeling this way, but I feel it. So, so because people who have this center defined, they put out the energy of this center. And so when it comes to decision making, because emotions operate in this wave of ups and downs, whereas as a pure generator, your sacral is like, or like it'll tell you right there in the moment. My sacral will tell me yes or no. However, it's better if I sleep on it. And if I
Mm.
can give myself more time to really ride out the emotional wave and make a decision from an emotionally neutral place, then that's even better. And that's important for, because like half the population has emotional authority. That's really important to know, because we live in this buy now, like instant click now, like you have, limited time offer, decide now society. And so one of the things that's helped me as an emotional generator is the saying, like, what's meant for me will never miss me. And so
Mm.
if I am taking the time to ride my emotional wave and an opportunity closes, a door shuts, like, I have to know and I have to trust that something better than whatever it is coming, and not make myself wrong for it. human design helps you to trust yourself, trust in divine timing, trust that voice inside of you when the world tries to make you wrong for doing so.
Oh, I love that. That's such a good lesson for anyone though. Like whatever you're not missing anything and that there's something better coming along. I mean, it's almost like when we were looking for our house, we had so many no's. I can't even tell you how many houses we put offers in. It was a hard time. And it was like the one yes we got was the house that was really meant for us. It was the best one. And but it was hard to see that, right? During the process of it. It was like, oh, I miss this one. This one's never coming back. Like the end of the world is here. But that wasn't it. And so, and it was yet to come. So I love that. One thing that you mentioned too, and I am very empathetic. That's another thing. Like how you describe me is like literally that's how I am. One of the things you mentioned was if you're going to move, or you said something about
Yeah.
moving. Tell us about that because there is something in human design about your environment.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk to us about that? Because that's one thing I don't know much about.
So yes, that is more of the intermediate advanced piece. So when you look at your chart, you'll see obviously the energy centers. You'll see the two, sides of it: the personality, the unconscious, the different gates that you have, and then you have the arrows that are at the top. And then the arrows oftentimes have those little numbers, like on my side at least, it has the little numbers underneath. Some of them don't have the numbers because they try and keep them clean. But I'm like, no, I want you to see it all. So even if you want to Google your life, like I love helping people save time and understanding their energy, but I'm going to give them everything they need to just go down the rabbit hole if they want. So the arrows that you're speaking about, those are the variables. And so depending on which direction they go and what those numbers are, it impacts kind of the environment that you thrive best in. And so do you
Okay.
remember what yours is? Mine is shores.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah, it's shores.
Okay.
Yeah.
so one thing is that when your environment is shores, like yes, there are natural shores, and then I think there's a variation where it can be man-made shores as well. The piece that's important is that this is where you get energy back. This is where you feel the most calm. This is where you feel the most settled. It is not always necessarily where you have to live. So like if you live in Arizona where there are no shores, you don't have to move to California. Like would you probably feel more at peace in California depending on where you are, right? Of course. But even Maryland, we have shores. Like I love that I'm on the eastern shore. So it's easy for me to find a place where there's a beach or something, which I actually thought that was funny when I saw that my place was shores because I don't like the sun. And historically, I haven't liked the beach because typically people go to the beach when it's hot and it's sunny. And I'm like, those are things that
Right.
I do not like. But I have gone to more shores on the off season, knowing that that's my environment now. And
Mm.
it's usually in a place where I might be like really going through something like Mercury retrograde. Astrology is a part of human design. It's not a piece that I've dove like super into, but when people in the spiritual community are talking about something, they're like, "Oh yeah, Mercury's in retrograde. Everything is like a poop storm right now." Like, I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, I feel that actually. I don't know much about the science of the retrograde, but I feel what you're talking about." And so I took some time and I went to my place and I took some deep breaths. I listened to the water. I closed my eyes. It was like a clarity moment. And so this is where you feel the most clear. It's not always
Mm.
necessarily where you have to live. So that was something that I had to learn because I was like, do I need to? Because living by the beach, the insurance is expensive. So, right? Because
Yeah, just I think everything is expensive when you're living by the beach.
yeah.
I have always been very drawn to the water.
Mm-hmm.
Like speaking of astrology, like I'm 100% water. Like all my signs are water signs. And I have always just known that I feel better when I go to the beach. I'm not like right on the beach or anything, but I'm not far.
Yeah.
And so when I'm having like a day that I'm not feeling great, I will go to the beach. I'll take a walk, or, this summer has been amazing because the water is so cold in California, but it's been warm. So like once a week, we've been going and jumping in the ocean. And I can tell you, it's just like for me, the feeling I get is just amazing. And I know it's just because I'm so drawn to the beach and the water and the ocean. So I do like when I saw that, I was like, duh, like that is so me. And it just made so much sense. And it does, like, I do get my energy. I spend a ton of time in the winter at the beach. Like we'll go and have picnics and we'll sit on the water, and my kids and I don't know. I don't think my family is shores.
Yeah.
Because they're always like, oh, again, we're going to the beach. I'm like, please, like, we're so lucky. But it is different for me. Like it does fill my cup. I like what you said about, you can really go down the rabbit hole with this, because there are so many like bits and pieces to human design. The first time I got my chart, I was like, what? Like there's so much to it. I found this in, I think it was like 2021. I actually reached out to someone who does human design because I got so much value out of it. And we spent an hour on the phone and she walked me through everything. So is that something that you do with your clients? And like, say they want to learn more about this, tell us like what the process is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that you reached out, because you're like, I want someone to walk me through this. And that's often when people reach out. They're like, I've heard about human design. I've heard how it can help, but it's a lot. So, right.
It's a lot.
what do I need to know to make this thing work? Or like, what's in it for me? So the first thing I always say starts with pulling your chart. So pulling their free chart. From there, I would say the next step up is the understand and master your energy reading. So we go over a brief run through of like, what does it means to be a generator or projector, reflector, whatever you are. What does that mean for you? What does it mean to actually listen to your strategy and authority? What does your profile mean? So that fraction number that I was talking about, the 5-1, because these represent how you show up and interact with the world. So my 5 is on my unconscious side. So I'm a challenge solver. I have this save the day energy. And I always use the example of being at Target, because I don't work there, and people will oftentimes come up to me and they're like, hey, do you know where this is? And another 5-1, he was in a different country, didn't even speak the language. And people are like coming up to him like, and he's like, I can't help you at all. So not every projection is correct for you. And then of course the one line is the investigator, the researcher. I love a good rabbit hole. And so I'm constantly learning new things about gene keys, human design, the newest rabbit hole, the Akashic records, like so many different rabbit holes pique my interest. But so you'll learn what those are for you. What's your profile? And then that's really just like, when I say we go through a brief run through of those things, because like, yes, those things are important. Yes, experiment with your strategy and authority. But the main thing for that reading is your 4 most important gifts. So what's in your conscious sun and earth gates and your unconscious sun and earth gates, because those represent what you're here to do in this lifetime, what you're here to learn, what deeply fulfills you. And the biggest one that many of us want answers to, what's our purpose here? And so we talk about each of those different gates that are there, what the strengths are, what living in the shadow might look like or might have looked like. And then I hold space for them to reflect. I have questions for each one, for them to reflect on how they can actually start transforming out of the shadows and living more into those gift and higher frequencies. And they have access to the recording so that they don't have to like take copious notes during the whole time. Like, be present. And then they have the reflection questions, because oftentimes when we're experiencing whatever our not self theme is, so for generators, is frustration. So whenever we're experiencing frustration, I invite them to look back at those questions, look at the questions that are coming out of their open or undefined centers, because oftentimes we're trying to answer one of those questions with a belief that originated outside of ourselves. It's not what we actually believe. one of the things I always encourage my clients to do is to challenge their beliefs and where they came from, because we were all fed this one size fits all approach of like, you go to school, you get good grades, you get into university, you get a good job, you get the kids, you married, you get the kids, you get the house, right, the whole thing, and then when you retire you can go live your life and travel the world. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that way. And if you're trying to fit into that norm, that status quo, you're gonna experience that not self. You're gonna experience anger, frustration, bitterness, disappointment. And so challenge your beliefs, because oftentimes the ones that were programmed into you aren't actually serving you.
I had to write that down. Challenge your beliefs.
Yeah.
That's so good. You know, I've been seeing online, I've been seeing some of this people starting this conversation of like, it starts with college. Like that was one of the things that I've been seeing online, and people are talking about, there are other ways. And if you are a child or a kid and you're growing up and you don't resonate with that status quo that you were just laying out for us, that could lead to just like so much confusion, but also upset and overwhelmed, because you're like, okay, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. Why doesn't it feel right? And so having somebody to kind of walk through that with you and let you know it's okay. Like, here's your permission slip to not follow what you think you have to do, because it's so true. We're all so unique. Like, to say that everybody should follow that exact same path is crazy. And my husband must be the same thing that you were talking about earlier, where, people ask you things
Yeah.
and you're like the target. We were in France, and first of all, he's Filipino, so he doesn't even look French. And people were coming up to us and they were like, can you tell us? They were like trying to speak in French and like using their books. And what subway do I take? He's like, first of all, I don't speak French. And then, but then he's so smart that he was like, okay, this is what you're going to do. And he
Right.
told them what to do. So that was even funnier. But
it's because we're
this is just
solutions
so
people.
Fun. Yes. Oh my gosh, that is him. I need to do his chart,
Yes.
but like I could tell for sure
Yes.
that's in it. I can tell you. And it's so fun too with my family, because I did do my kids and I found out what they are. One of the ones that I don't know much about that I need to figure out is my son. He's a projector. Can you tell us a little bit about what a projector is? Because I know that's a smaller population.
Yeah, right. So we have the Manny gens and the generators taking up like 70%, but then we have these smaller groups. Projectors make up like 20% of the population, and these are our guides. These are people who see and thrive on the bigger picture. They can look at us and they can kind of see our gifts. It's actually one of those things where he'll spend a lot of his time focusing on the gifts and things of other people, of course, depending on like his energy and how it flows, but like focusing on other people and not necessarily focusing on himself because he's here to help. And so one of the things that comes with being a projector is that invitation, right? Their strategy, as I'm sure you saw, is to wait for the invitation. And so what happens is, because they can see the bigger picture, because they can see our gifts and our strengths when we can't, a lot of the times, they will try to give us advice. They will try to give us insights. And if they're not invited in to do so, they'll have very much a reaction of like, well, nobody asked you. Like, who do you think that you are telling me what is what? And like, and that's what causes the not self-theme and projectors of bitterness, because it's like, well, I was just trying to help. I guess I'll just go over here to my corner then, since nobody needs my help. My dad's a projector too. So so
you have experience,
right? Yeah, which is why I also know that projectors, when they are invited in, they love to be recognized for their gifts and their strengths, because they spend so much time focusing on people around them, that when they're invited in, like when I ask my dad for something, I I make sure I'm like, you see it, like, you're awesome at this one thing. Like, can I have your actually on my birthday, that's what it was. I was like, you have a fire. He has a fire pit on his like patio. And I was like, you're like an expert. Every time I see you light this fire pit, and we were at an Airbnb and it wasn't working. And I was like, can you help me? Because I don't understand. Like, there's a propane tank. I don't know if it's like, how do I tell the things to make this work? Because every time I see it, you do it with such ease. And he was like, well, do this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And that's what happens when they are seen for the knowledge and the insights and the wisdom that they have inside of them. And they're invited to share that with people in order to help. That's when it really, like, it lights them up to do that. So I don't know if you've experienced that at all with him. Like, when he's invited to do something, like when he's asked, when he's recognized, like, right? How old is your son?
So he's 13.
Right? You're so awesome at cleaning your room. Like, I love the way you organize things. Like, it would be really great if you could clean your room like that. Like,
yes, I'm going to try that because nothing else is working. But yeah, I have used that in when it's like he's a baseball player.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying, like, why don't you, I had him go outside with his brother. I'm like, why don't you show him a couple things? Because he's like not really as into sports as you, and you're so good at baseball. And so they went outside, and I was like looking, and he was really cute, like coaching him and like showing him how to do certain things. This is not an everyday occurrence, by the way, but you could tell like it is. It builds him up. It like built him up a little bit to think like, oh yeah, I am good, and he is good at coaching. Like, he is good at explaining things that he knows a lot about. So I could see that totally with him. That's so interesting. It's so fun too, because the way we can respond and interact with our family and our relationships, it can benefit you to know how you respond, how they respond. I feel like it's just so good for parenting as well. Do you use it with your parenting?
Absolutely. So when I first discovered human design, I was like, "Oh, this is me. This is deeply resonating and validating and confirming for who I am." And then, of course, I looked at my partner, and then I looked at my daughter, and I was like, "This is y'all. Like, this right here, these seem like cheat codes." Like, I was like, if the things that I'm reading right now resonate for you as even half as much as they are for me right now, I'm like, this is a hack. And so I'll give
Yes.
I'll give the example of my daughter. So both her dad and I are generators. He is a pure generator. I am an emotional generator. So lots of energy shared exchange there. But we both have undefined ego heart centers. And so our daughter is a manifesting generator. And so she's one of those hybrid energies. And I envy her sometimes because she has consistent access to her voice, and she uses it often and does not care what's coming out of her mouth and how it might affect people. I'm like constantly spending so much energy with my completely open throat of like, okay, how do I say this in the right way so that it lands in just the right time? And she's like,
Me too.
she's like, just blabbing around all day. We oftentimes tell her, like, watch what's coming out of your mouth. But she has a defined heart center. And so the heart ego center is the center for self-esteem and self-worth and willpower. And so this was important for us to know as parents, because pick your battles. And so I'll give the example of, so I have a book that's launching on Friday, September 20th. And so she is in school, and I asked her, at first she wasn't going to come because I was like, she's in school. Obviously, it's a non-starter. Like, she's not going to miss school. And then the book that I'm a part of, it's an anthology. So the person who's like the visionary leader, she's like, I think she can miss school for this. Like, I think she can. And so, I was like, okay. I talked to her dad. I was like, would you be cool with Taylor missing school for my book launch? And he was like, yeah, sure. And then, right, in being a human design coach, I asked Taylor, and I was like, hey, Taylor, mommy's book is launching on this date. It's a Friday. And so you would have to miss school. And I thought that would be a bonus for her. She's like, oh, I have to think about it. And she also has emotional authority, by the way. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll check back in with you. And so I waited. And I waited like a week, and then I asked her again. I was like, hey, so how you feeling about mommy's book launch? You're gonna come? And she's like, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think I'm gonna come. And I said, oh, okay. Are you sure? Like, like, right? I was like, are you sure? Like, is mommy's gonna be dressed up? She's gonna be like taking pictures and stuff, and daddy's gonna be there. And she's like, no, I'm okay. And so, where human design helps with the parenting piece is I honored her decision. Some parents, they would make her feel wrong. They would try and guilt or shame her into like, I do so much for you. Like, you can't show up for me on this day. And I did none of that. I was like, okay, I guess we'll have Nana pick you up from the bus stop that day because me and Daddy will both be at the book launch then.
I cannot stop thinking this is so funny to me because my younger son is a manifesting generator. It was almost like you were describing him. I don't know all the other details. I only know what his type is, but he literally will say things and first of all, he's telling the truth. Second of all, he would also decline the book launch. He's like, no, there would be no way he's missing school because school is very important to him. Yeah. He doesn't want to get behind. Like he has to be really sick to stay home. But he is very verbal and he will say what he needs to say. And even the other day when we were at the beach and we were getting ready to go and I was like, hey, I go, you know what, this bathing suit, this is kind of like, it kind of doesn't match. I'm like, it almost doesn't match so much that it matches. And he's like, well, don't be offended, but it doesn't match. And I was like, okay, good to know. He's 10. But yes, oh my gosh, so much of what you said about your daughter is like my son.
She's 7.
And
oh my gosh, she has even less of a filter.
Wow. I mean, there's really, I feel like there's literally no filter with my son too, but at least he'll apologize up front. Okay, well, sorry, you might not like this, but this is what I'm going to say anyways. But it is very interesting how that plays out with human design. And like you said, knowing how to respond to them, knowing how to interact and like what serves them really the best in your relationship, it does help so much. So this is a great tool for anyone with kids. The next thing I want to ask you about, we've talked a lot about human design. How do you take the gene keys after that and utilize, because that's more of something that you need to work on with your clients, or is that something people can do on their own?
So here's what I'll say about gene keys. So human design, I love that we talk so much about it because it's very practical. It's very like step. And so I found that to be true during my rabbit hole. I found gene keys like 2 months into my human design rabbit hole. And I learned that in my like most important sphere, I am supposed to transform the shadow of immaturity. So being in this place that is constantly seeking validation outside of myself and move to a place of this internal groundedness, being able to validate, without the outside noise. So that was the definition of immaturity. And I was like, well, I'm doing a lot of that. So yeah, that tracks. I'm obviously in the shadow here seeking validation. And so when you're able to transform that into the gift, it's expansion. And I was like, that tracks, right? If I'm able to say, you're doing okay, and to not need someone else to say that I'm doing okay, like I'm able to step into a lot more things. So I was like, that tracks as a gift. And the city is super abundance. And I was like, well, how do I get there? Because I'm doing a lot of the shadow. I see where the gift potential is, but super abundant, I don't even think I'm abundant right now. Like, how do we get to super abundance? And the thing with gene keys is, yes, it is a lot of work that you have to do. It's a lot of time you have to spend with yourself, contemplating the areas where you have lived in the shadow. How could you have lived in the gift more? How could you have stepped out of that? So it is a lot of contemplation. It is a lot of self-work. However, it's important to have a guide because it can be super easy to be like, because let me tell you, when I did the activation sequence retreat, I was like, oh yeah, like I learned that, this is how you do it. I've spent time in contemplation and we moved through all the spheres. And I was like, I'm good, right? I'm good to go. I can transform shadows. And then I started to see other areas in my life where the shadow was still coming up. And I was like, dang, that's here too. And so having someone outside of yourself, like, yes, you have to do the work yourself. You have to be in the contemplation, but having somebody who can see your blind spots in areas where you maybe think that you're all the way there and you're like, and just having someone be like, remember that brand sphere that we talked about? Yeah, you might want to spend some time in reflection. So, and actually being held accountable, right? Having someone who you can check in with after a week or two and be like, so did you reflect on, because it's easy to be like, oh, you're right, yeah, I'm gonna go reflect on that, right? And then life starts lifing, and then we don't do it, and then it's like 2 weeks later, it's like, hey, did you do the thing? I didn't do the thing.
Right. Well, that's just why I'm such a fan of coaching anyways. I mean, one of the biggest benefits is to have someone to stay accountable to, but to, an expert who can help you with these things. I mean, there's so many layers to both of these tools that if you're not trained in it, like, it's going to be really hard for you to, I mean, even just me wanting to do human design for my own life and find out how it could help me, I still felt the need to, like, have some help with that, and it was very, very, very valuable. So you mentioned a book, so tell us about your book. It's book launch week.
I know, right? Yes.
Yay.
A lot of internally validating myself through this process. Yes. So the book is an anthology. It's called Destiny Expose, the Leading Ladies Edition. And so I am one of 14 authors who have really been trailblazers in their respective fields. So we have a therapist who went through, I believe, and you're obviously going to have to read her chapter, but I believe she went through 23 miscarriages.
Oh.
And she still kept fighting, and I think she has 2 kids now. And
Aww.
she helps individuals. We have a 30-year retired brigadier general who was a leading lady in her own right with all of the climbing of the ranks and things. And so it was funny because we didn't get assigned chapters. We had to choose chapters. And when I was on the call learning about all of these awesome ladies, I was like, they're doing some awesome things. And they're all older than me because I'm technically a millennial, and they are Gen Xers. And I'm like, do I belong here? Like, Dr. Marcia said I could be in the book, and I paid the money to be a part of this project. So I understand, like, but like, and so my chapter is about imposter syndrome, because everything that I was feeling, questioning my worth, questioning whether I belonged at the table, questioning all of that, being in a place of external validation seeking, I had to kind of shed that, not just for the book, but in various areas of my life. And so my chapter is called Learning to Lead from Within. So it's about my story of how I pivoted in my business from product based to service based, how I tried a bunch of different one size fits all approaches that did not work, even though they were working for other people, and how the one thing that really helped, aside from my clinical trial, which was the catalyst, was the time I spent with my life coach, meeting her every week, talking about the old stories that my brain was telling me, helping me shed fear and self-doubt and stepping into who I was. So yeah, that's what the chapter is about in the book, Destiny Expose, Leading Ladies Edition.
I love that topic so much. I mean, if you're going to go to the next level in life, any area of it, you're going to go through that because it's new, it's hard, everybody else is doing it better than you. And so, I think it means that you're on the right track if you have that feeling, of imposter syndrome. I love I'm a life coach now, and it's something new too. So I know about this feeling very well, but it's something new this year. And the reason I wanted to become a coach is because of the impact coaching has made on my life, and it's life-changing. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much it is. And that is amazing, your story about working with someone every week and how that truly can change your life. So this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. I would love if you could tell people where to find you. Of course, I will link your website so everybody can go and get their human design, and as well as your book, where I can link to so people can check that out as well.
Yeah, so that's really, I'd love that you're going to link it, because that's just what I was going to say. DiamondDripConsulting.com. It's the place where you can pull your chart. It's the place where you can learn more about the book. I've done a few podcasts around the book with some of the authors, so you can learn about some of the other ladies in the book. And it's also where all my social handles are. So I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, all of the places except for Twitter, or X as it's called now. And so all of those links are there on the website.
Okay, perfect. I'll go follow you today as well. And thanks again for sharing all of this. This has been amazing.
Same. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and review so we can reach more people who want to learn to glow alongside us. See you next time.